All right, so you're back into crypto,
Mm.
I see. And this time you're looking into Bitcoin
Yeah.
and specifically how it could be affected by like current world events.
Hmm.
It seems like we've got some pretty fascinating stuff to go over today.
Absolutely.
We've got market analysis, a really in-depth economic theory,
Yeah.
and even some pretty strong opinions from some big names.
Yeah, some spirited opinions,
Yeah.
for sure. What I think is so fascinating is how things that seem completely disconnected,
Yeah,
like presidential politics,
right.
global trade,
You wouldn't think so.
actually can create these ripple effects
Yeah,
that impact something like crypto.
yeah,
And especially in a market as volatile as crypto is,
right.
understanding those connections, that
Hmm.
can be really valuable.
Totally. And speaking of volatility, why don't we start with like where the crypto market is right now, just
Uh,
as a snapshot.
Sounds good.
So Bitcoin is holding relatively strong, around that $100,000 mark.
Huh.
But other major players like Ethereum and Solana are facing some like headwinds.
Interesting.
It's almost like Bitcoin is becoming this like digital gold,
Yeah.
right? It's weathering the storm while others struggle.
Oh, that's a really interesting point.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not just about the price going up or down.
Right.
It's really about like where the energy and momentum are flowing.
Mm-hmm.
And we're actually seeing these meme coins,
Oh, yeah.
like Pump Fund,
I was just going to say
which
that.
is actually built on Solana.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
It's sucking up liquidity.
Yeah.
And you could argue that that is hindering
Yeah.
the growth of projects
Yeah.
that have more established use cases and real-world applications.
Right. So they're basically just chasing pumps.
It's like choosing the lottery ticket
Mhm.
over investing in a solid company.
Yeah, I know. It's wild to see Pump Fund actually pulling in more trading volume than Solana and Ethereum combined.
It is.
Like you would think with all the developments in DeFi and NFTs,
Right.
that money would be flowing towards those innovations.
Mhm.
But I guess the allure of just quick money is powerful.
It's really powerful.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And it really highlights that psychological aspect of investing,
Yeah.
especially in a market as young and unpredictable as crypto is.
Mm.
Understanding these market cycles,
Yeah.
the ebb and flow between like hype and consolidation,
Yeah.
really essential for anyone looking to be a successful long-term investor.
For sure.
Yeah. It's about discerning between speculative bubbles and real sustainable value.
Totally. Okay, so speaking of things that have stood the test of time,
Yeah.
let's talk about this Triffin dilemma that
Okay.
you're looking into.
All right.
Sounds intimidating.
Yeah, it's a mouthful.
Yeah.
For sure.
So from what I understand, it's this theory about the challenges that the U.S. faces,
All right.
being the issuer of like the world's reserve currency, which
Mhm.
is the U.S. dollar.
The dollar.
Everyone needs dollars for international trade, but that can actually make the dollar too strong,
Mm-hmm.
which can actually hurt U.S. exports
Yeah.
because it makes them more expensive.
It
So-
does.
so-
Exactly. The U.S. is constantly trying to balance this,
Yeah.
keep the dollar strong enough to maintain that global dominance,
Right.
but not so strong that it cripples its own export industries.
Oh.
It's really like a tightrope walk.
Right.
Too much sway in either direction, and things could really fall apart.
Wow. And has this happened before?
It has.
Like historically,
Yeah.
what are some examples?
Well, take the Bretton Woods system.
Okay.
After World War II,
Right.
the U.S. dollar was pegged to gold,
Mm-hmm.
and other countries pegged their currencies to the dollar.
Okay.
Now, this did create some stability for a while,
Yeah.
but as the U.S. economy grew
Right.
and more dollars flowed out,
Mm-hmm.
it led to inflation
Ah,
and pressure on those gold reserves.
I see.
And eventually the system collapsed
Wow.
in the early 1970s when President Nixon took the U.S. off the gold standard.
Oh, wow.
And that move created huge volatility in the global financial system.
Right.
And we're actually still dealing with the repercussions today.
Wow. Okay, so this Triffin dilemma,
Yeah?
it's not just some abstract theory.
It's not.
It's actually had a real impact.
It's had a real impact on the world.
on the wow.
And it's still relevant, especially as we navigate
Yeah.
this increasingly multipolar world
Right.
with emerging economies kind of challenging the dominance of the U.S. dollar.
Yeah.
Some economists actually argue that we may be on the verge of another major shift in the global financial system.
Wow. Okay, so bring it back to today.
Okay.
You mentioned presidential politics earlier.
Yes.
One of the sources actually argues that Trump's tariff strategy
Mhm.
might have been about intentionally weakening the dollar.
Okay.
Now, this is a little bit controversial,
It is.
but hear me out.
Okay.
The source suggests that by making imports more expensive,
Right.
those tariffs could potentially make U.S. exports cheaper
Mm-hmm.
and therefore more competitive globally.
Yeah.
So it's like a roundabout way of trying to level the playing field.
It is a provocative argument.
Yeah.
The idea is that by disrupting the flow of trade and potentially reducing that reliance on short-term debt,
Yeah.
tariffs could force a renegotiation of global financial agreements
Right.
and ultimately benefit the U.S. economy in the long run,
Right.
like shaking up the chessboard to gain a strategic advantage.
Oh, I like that analogy.
Yeah, okay. Of course, this is just one perspective.
Right.
And there's a lot of debate about whether tariffs actually achieve those goals. Some argue they actually lead to higher prices for consumers
Right.
and actually hurt domestic industries that rely on those imported goods.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So,
Okay,
yeah.
so where does Bitcoin fit into all of this? I mean, we're
Ooh.
talking about global trade wars, currency manipulation.
Mm.
How does like a decentralized digital currency even play a role in this high stakes game?
Well, that's where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
So remember what we were talking about earlier?
Yeah.
The potential for the dollar to weaken,
Mm-hmm.
even if it's part of a strategic play.
Yeah.
Well, if the dollar loses its purchasing power,
Mm-hmm.
investors, both in the U.S. and globally,
Right.
are going to start looking for alternative assets
Yeah.
to store their wealth.
To store their wealth in.
And Bitcoin, with its limited supply
Right.
and independence from any government or central bank,
Mm-hmm.
starts to look very appealing in this scenario.
It starts to make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Okay. It's
Yeah.
like when the stock market's doing poorly,
Yeah,
people flock to gold as a safe haven.
exactly.
Could Bitcoin be the digital equivalent of gold in this new uncertain world?
That's exactly the argument
Yeah.
that many Bitcoin proponents are making.
Okay.
They see it as a hedge against inflation,
Mm-hmm.
a store of value that can't be manipulated by governments
Right.
or devalued by excessive money printing. And as more and more people lose faith in these traditional systems,
Mm-hmm.
they believe Bitcoin will become increasingly attractive.
So what you're saying is understanding these big picture economic trends, like the Triffin dilemma, the potential for a weaker dollar, the
Yeah,
rise of alternative assets, that's crucial.
it's crucial.
So anyone who wants to navigate the crypto market successfully.
Absolutely. It's about connecting the dots,
Yeah.
seeing the bigger picture,
Mm-hmm.
understanding how these forces could shape the future of finance.
Yeah.
And that's what we're here to do.
I love it.
Unpack these complex ideas and equip you with the knowledge to make informed decisions about your financial future.
All right, so this is getting me super curious about where we go from here.
Okay.
What are your thoughts on how this all might play out in the coming years?
Right.
I am ready to take the deep dive into the potential impact of a weaker dollar on Bitcoin and what it all means for investors.
Well, let's take a moment to unpack that because it's a question with some potentially huge implications. Welcome back. So before the break, we were talking about the potential for a weaker dollar to drive investors towards Bitcoin.
Right.
But I think we should probably unpack that a little bit.
Yeah.
What does a weaker dollar actually mean?
Right. For like the average person.
Yeah, for you and me.
Well, I mean, for starters, it means your dollars just won't buy as much.
Right.
Like, remember that loaf of bread?
Yeah, from our bakery analogy.
It's going to cost more.
Yeah. And that cup of coffee,
Yeah. More expensive.
pricier. And that's what we call inflation,
Right.
when the purchasing power of your money decreases over time.
Yeah.
Now, a little bit of inflation is normal
Okay.
and even healthy for a growing economy.
Right.
But when it spirals out of control,
Yeah.
it can really erode the value of your savings. And it makes it harder to afford, those everyday necessities.
For sure.
And this is where this debate about tariffs gets really interesting.
Wait, so tariffs can cause inflation? Yeah.
Help me connect those dots.
Okay. So think about it this way.
Okay.
When tariffs are placed on imported goods,
Right.
those goods become more expensive for businesses to bring into the country.
Okay.
And what do businesses do when their costs go up?
They raise prices.
They often have to raise prices for consumers.
Right. Pass it on down the line.
Exactly. So those tariffs ripple through the economy,
Yeah.
leading to higher prices for everything you know, from clothes and electronics to groceries and gas.
Wow.
And that's how tariffs can contribute to inflation.
Okay. So tariffs might make those imported avocados for my toast more expensive.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So that makes people lose a little faith in the dollar. I get that. But how does that lead people to Bitcoin? How
Right?
is that a hedge?
It goes back to supply and demand. You
Okay.
see, governments can print more fiat currency
Right.
whenever they want,
Hmm.
which can devalue the currency over time.
Right.
But Bitcoin has a fixed supply,
Right.
capped at 21 million coins.
That scarcity is built into its code.
Yeah.
No one can change it.
So no matter what happens with inflation, there will never be more than 21 million Bitcoins.
That's right.
I can see how that would be appealing
Yeah.
if you're worried about your dollars losing value.
It's like the difference between a limited edition print
Okay.
and a mass-produced poster.
Okay.
The limited edition holds its value
Right.
because there are only so many in existence.
Okay. So we've got inflation potentially pushing people towards Bitcoin.
Yeah.
But there's another piece of this puzzle I'm still trying to wrap my head around.
Okay.
It's the U.S. debt and how it ties into all of this.
Right.
You mentioned earlier that Trump's tariffs might have been part of a strategy to reduce reliance on short-term debt.
Yeah.
Honestly, it sounds a bit like a conspiracy theory.
Well, it's not so much a conspiracy theory as it is a different way to look at the situation.
Okay.
You see, the U.S. government finances a lot of its spending by issuing treasury bills,
Okay.
which are essentially short-term loans.
Yep.
But to keep things running, the U.S. has to constantly refinance these loans
Okay.
as they mature.
So it's like a revolving door of debt.
Yeah,
Always having to borrow more just to pay off what's due.
exactly. And as interest rates rise,
Yeah.
the cost of servicing that debt goes up
Right.
and puts even more strain on the government's budget.
Okay.
Now, the source that you were talking about
Yeah.
argues that tariffs could actually help break this cycle.
Okay.
Well, if tariffs make U.S. exports cheaper
Right.
and imports more expensive,
Mm-hmm.
it could reduce the trade deficit,
Okay.
meaning that the U.S. would be buying less from other countries
Right.
and selling more,
Okay.
and that could lead to a decrease in demand for treasury bills
Interesting.
because those foreign countries would be holding fewer U.S. dollars.
So less demand for U.S. debt, less reliance on those short-term loans.
Exactly.
Sounds too good to be true.
Of course, there's always another side to the coin. Critics would argue that tariffs can actually harm domestic industries that rely on those imported components
Right.
and lead to retaliatory tariffs from other countries,
Yeah.
ultimately hurting everyone involved.
Right. It's a trade-off.
It's complex. There are
Oh.
no easy answers.
Yeah.
But the point is, these macro trends,
Yeah.
trade policy, debt management, the strength of the dollar,
Mm-hmm.
they're all interconnected.
Yeah.
And understanding those connections can give you a real advantage
Yeah.
when it comes to navigating the crypto market.
Okay. I'm starting to see the bigger picture here.
Yeah.
We've got inflation potentially driving people towards Bitcoin as a safe haven.
Mm-hmm.
We've got this U.S. debt situation
Yeah.
and how tariffs might play a role in managing that.
Yeah, it's a giant chess game.
It is.
We're just trying to figure out the next move.
So in this game, what is the next move?
Well, in a game as complex as this one,
Yeah.
the ability to kind of anticipate those moves,
Right.
understand the underlying forces at play, could be the difference between success and failure.
Wow.
It's not about getting caught up in the hype or chasing those short-term gains.
Right.
It's about thinking long-term,
Mhm.
strategically,
Right.
and positioning yourself for whatever the future may hold.
This all sounds pretty intense.
Yeah.
I can see why some people are hesitant to even dip their toes into crypto.
It can be overwhelming,
Yeah.
especially with all of the noise and conflicting information out there.
Yeah.
That's why it's so important to have a solid understanding of the fundamentals.
So for someone who's just starting to explore crypto,
Yeah.
what advice would you give them?
I would say the most important thing is to start with a solid foundation of knowledge.
Okay.
Learn about the history of money,
Yeah.
explore the different types of crypto assets,
Okay.
and understand the technology behind blockchain.
Yeah.
Don't just jump into trading without doing your research.
I like that.
Yeah, it's like anything else.
Right.
The more you learn, the better equipped you'll be to make good decisions.
Totally.
Yeah.
And don't be afraid to ask questions.
Yeah.
Challenge those assumptions.
Right.
Seek out different perspectives.
Absolutely.
The crypto world's constantly evolving.
It is.
So the only way to stay ahead of the curve is to be a lifelong learner.
Exactly.
This has been a really eye-opening conversation for me.
Good.
It's made me realize that the crypto market's not just some isolated bubble.
Yeah,
It's deeply intertwined with the global economy.
absolutely.
And it's influenced by forces that most people don't even realize are there.
Absolutely. And as we move forward, those connections are only going to get stronger.
Wow.
So whether you're a seasoned investor
Yeah.
or just starting to explore the possibilities,
Right.
understanding these macro trends, it's essential for anyone who wants to navigate this,
Yeah.
exciting,
Yeah.
often unpredictable world of crypto.
All right, so we've laid out the macro landscape.
Yeah.
We've talked about inflation, tariffs, the U.S. debt.
Right.
But what does all this mean for the average person who's just interested in Bitcoin?
Yeah.
What practical steps can they take to protect their wealth and potentially benefit from these trends? Let's dive into that. Okay, so we've been talking about how these global events and economic policies, those big, seemingly distant things,
Yeah.
can actually have a real impact on the crypto market,
Right.
specifically Bitcoin.
Yeah.
But let's bring it back down to earth.
Okay.
What does this all mean for the average person
Right.
who's interested in this stuff?
Yeah, it's one thing to understand the big picture,
Yeah.
but it's quite another to know how to actually apply that knowledge to your own financial decisions.
Totally.
So you've been listening to this. You're starting to see the potential of Bitcoin,
Right.
especially in light of everything that we've talked about. Where do you go from here?
Right. Because it's easy to get caught up in the fear or the hype.
It is.
But at the end of the day, we want to make smart choices with our money.
We do.
So let's say you're convinced Bitcoin is the future.
Yeah.
What do you do?
Well, that's where a lot of people, I think, kind of stumble.
Yeah.
They hear about all these macro trends.
Right.
And they think, I need to buy as much Bitcoin as possible right now.
Yeah. FOMO.
Right. But that can be really dangerous.
Yeah.
Just because the market is volatile
Right.
doesn't mean you should make rash decisions.
Okay.
This is a marathon, not a sprint.
So no panic buying.
No panic buying.
Got it.
Yeah.
But how do you approach it?
Right.
Should you wait for the perfect moment?
Right.
Should you try to time the market?
Trying to time the market is incredibly difficult,
Yeah.
even for seasoned professionals.
Okay.
A much more sensible approach is dollar cost averaging.
Okay. Remind me what that is again.
Yeah. So instead of buying all your Bitcoin at once,
Mm-hmm.
which is risky, if the price drops suddenly,
Right.
you spread out your purchases over time.
Okay.
So maybe you buy a little bit every week or every month,
Right.
regardless of what the price is. That way you average out your cost basis
Gotcha.
and you reduce the impact of that volatility.
It's don't put all your eggs in one basket.
Exactly.
But instead of baskets, we're talking about points in time.
Different points in time.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's
Right.
about spreading out your risk,
Hmm.
not letting your emotions dictate your investment decisions.
Right. So
Yeah.
you're not trying to pick the exact bottom
No.
or catch the peak.
No.
You're just consistently investing
Yeah.
over time,
Over time.
letting the market do its thing.
That's the idea. And it can be applied to any asset class.
Okay.
It takes the emotion out of it and helps you stay disciplined.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, so we've covered not panicking, thinking long term,
Right.
dollar cost averaging.
Mm-hmm.
But something else has been on my mind.
Okay.
Remember when we were talking about those meme coins?
Yes.
How they're so tempting?
Yeah.
The potential for those quick profits?
I know. It's very tempting.
Yeah. But we have to remember that those quick gains can often mean a higher risk,
Absolutely.
losing it all.
Yeah.
Which brings us to diversification.
Yes.
You hear it all the time,
You do.
investing.
Yeah.
But what does it actually mean
Yeah.
for someone who's into crypto?
Yeah. Diversification in crypto is really about not putting all your eggs in one basket.
Right.
Even if that basket is Bitcoin,
Okay.
there are literally thousands of crypto projects out there,
It's true.
each with its own technology,
Yeah.
use case potential.
Right.
Spreading your investment across different assets can help mitigate risk.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe you allocate a portion to Bitcoin,
Okay.
some to Ethereum,
Yeah.
maybe even explore some smaller up-and-coming projects
Okay.
that you find interesting.
So it's like building a portfolio.
It is.
But instead of stocks and bonds,
Exactly.
we're talking about different crypto assets.
Different crypto assets,
Yeah.
right? And it's important to remember that diversification isn't just about spreading risk. It's also about potentially maximizing your returns
Right.
because different crypto assets perform differently at different times.
Okay.
Having a diversified portfolio can help you capture gains across a wider range of market conditions.
But isn't it hard to keep track of all these different projects?
Yeah.
The crypto world moves so fast.
It does. It's constantly evolving.
New things are popping up every day.
It's true. It can feel overwhelming.
Yeah.
It's like drinking from a fire hose.
Yeah.
But that's part of what makes it so exciting.
Okay.
There's always something new to learn, new innovations to explore.
Yeah.
The key is to find reliable sources of information,
Mm-hmm.
engage with the community, and never stop learning.
Right. So follow some thought leaders.
Yeah.
Join some online forums. Read those white papers.
Absolutely.
Don't be afraid to experiment.
Yeah. Try different platforms and projects.
It's like this never-ending adventure,
It is.
constantly exploring new frontiers.
Exactly. And that's what I love about it. It's not just about making money.
Right.
It's about being a part of something bigger,
Yeah.
something that has the potential to transform the way we think about finance,
Right.
technology,
Yeah.
even society itself.
This deep dive has really opened my eyes.
Good. I'm glad.
Crypto is so much more than just trading
It is.
or trying to make like a quick buck.
It's about understanding those shifts that are happening in the world
Yeah.
and how this technology could play a role in shaping the future.
It's a whole new way of thinking about money and value.
Absolutely. And we're still in the early days.
It's true.
Who knows what the next 5, 10, 20 years will bring?
Yeah.
It's going to be a wild ride.
So for anyone listening
Yeah.
who is feeling inspired to like dive deeper into this world,
Yeah.
what's the one piece of advice that you would leave them with?
I would say stay curious, stay informed,
Okay.
and don't be afraid to challenge the status quo.
I like it.
Yeah. The crypto world is full of possibilities,
Mm-hmm.
but it's also full of risks.
Mm-hmm.
So do your research,
Right.
think critically,
Mm-hmm.
and never invest more than you can afford to lose.
Great advice. And remember, this is just the beginning of the conversation.
It is.
There's so much more to explore
Absolutely.
and discover.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning,
Yeah.
and keep that crypto curiosity burning bright.
We'll see you on the next deep dive.